Chinese aid to Africa has fueled corruption than it has ever been imagined. Others are of the view that China has the interests of Africa at heart, unlike their European counterparts, who would reap the nation's resources while they use loans, aids, and grants as cover-up. There is another school of thought which believe that we've been trading with the Europeans and the Americans for all this while. They provide us with aid, but never on any occasions have we recorded destruction to our natural habitat than this time when China has been providing all this support. Some people are also questioning the kind of impact Chinese aid has had on Africa. I know you equally have a lot of questions you would have loved to ask. That is why we are here tonight, to look at this very important subject. And I'm not going to be doing the talking alone. I'm here together with Professor Deladem. He's an associate professor of history, University of Cape Coast. And we're also expecting one gentleman to join us pretty shortly. But Prof, good evening.
Good evening.
I trust you are doing good.
I'm very well, thank you.
How are you enjoying the, should I say the vacation? Or you are still in school? It's over.
Actually, yeah,
Okay, so you're getting back to the lecture halls.
We're back. Yeah, actually, just we started teaching and getting the students, especially the freshmen and women, to settle in.
I see.
For some of us who, apart from lecturing, also take care of registration issues, this is also a time for us that to put in a lot of energy and work.
I see.
Yeah.
How is admission like this year, especially when it comes to your department
It's
of
been
history?
good. It's been good. I think that many of the students are beginning to, gravitate to the humanities in general,
Okay.
and history in particular, because they're beginning to understand the importance of the humanities. I'm not speaking right now to promote my area of inquiry and interest, but see, without the humanities, we are nothing. Basically, you can talk about all the sciences. Yes, important. I've always argued that Africa must become scientifically conscious, but at the same time, this science cannot really get us to be human without the humanities.
Okay.
If you don't have the humanities supporting the scientist, then the scientist can turn out to become a mad scientist and produce things that will, not, at the end of the day, be pro-life.
That is serious.
So with a mind that is nurtured by the humanities, a scientist will not even think of producing a virus that will kill other human beings. Yet you
but
have
these
scientists.
things are they real?
Yeah, but you
that
have
scientists would create such harmful
Yes, it's
organisms.
This is just because he's a scientist and he takes delight in creating and building things scientifically, and so at the end of the day, he can easily boast that yes, I created this. But to what end? Why do you even have to think of creating the atomic bomb or the nuclear or nuclear weapons? Yes, you can split the atom and use the power therein to do other things than to create a weapon to destroy people. So if you don't really get into the humanities, then you will not really be able to create things that will serve human beings, but just to create things just because you just want to create things. And the humanities also will basically help you to understand yourself better, especially history.
I see.
So
So you mean even if we have to pursue the sciences, we should have an aspect of humanities so we can create things that would better the lives of human beings.
That will be pro-life. And history, again, everything has a history.
Okay.
You see, and so many of the young people now are beginning to get it. For many Ghanaians and Africans, we have suffered from historical amnesia. And I don't want to, basically repeat this cliche, but it's important that the people who do not know where they are coming from will not know where they are going. So many do not understand why things are going haywire or why things are not so bright in Africa today. I think that the historically conscious person will understand why it is like that. For everything that exists today, there is always a beginning and a historical antecedent. And so many of the young ones, because of social media and interaction, they're beginning to, they tune into YouTube and they get these interesting dimensions about their past. And they beginning to go like, yeah, I would like to know the past. And you have debates now going on who is the founder and who's not the founder of Ghana, and so on and so forth. So many of them are beginning to think of getting to know more about the past, and I think that is what has inspired some of them to really come in to study history. Plus, there is this new policy that history is going to be taught at the basic schools. Yeah. So, in fact, we need more teachers to teach history, and it's not just the pedagogy and how to teach it, but we need people to have, grasp of the content. And that is where the Department of History becomes an important place for people to go, and an important place for the country to in a way brighten.
I see. I was rather scared because looking at the times we are living in, people would want to pursue university education and then after that get employed. And so what would be the motivation for somebody to go and study history at a university? At the end of the day, the question would be, where am I going to work?
It's always been the common myth that has been peddled over the years that, if you study history, you'll not get a good employment. It's also just like teaching. Some people will say, I'll just like to teach, and when I get a good job, I'll leave it. So you see, it's just how certain disciplines have been sold to people over the years, in other words, and how people have seen disciplines and professions, or so to speak, professions like, becoming a medical doctor or a lawyer. So you go to school and you have a clear-cut, line to follow.
Okay.
But when you study history, is it just to know about the past, or is it also something that is a profession? Yes, there are professional historians. I'm a professional historian. And I practice history, actually. So it's just, so someone would say, well, you study African studies or history. Do you practice history? Do you practice African studies? Of course I practice my history. And so I'm a professional historian. History can be for just edification. And history is also about making one to think critically, not to be a critical thinker, but to think critically. And history can also get you a job as a journalist. You can also go and study law. You can work with an NGO. You can work with any diplomatic mission. You can work with the UN. You can be a professional researcher. You can work in the archives. You can work in the museum. You can establish a business. You can be a consultant. You can do anything with history. See, every discipline you have in the world, as well as every profession you have in the world, you have a history attached to any of that. There is a history of mathematics. There's a history of biology. There's a history of chemistry. There's a history of law. But tell me, is there the mathematics of history? Is there the geography of history? But there's a history of geography. In other words, history is the mother of all disciplines. And it's important for us to really explain and tell people these basic truths about history. History is not only about dates. Yesterday I was somewhere and someone said, "See, Prof, I really like history, but it's all about dates." Not sir, it's not about dates. History, the basic definition of history is not the study of dates. It's not. The basic definition of history is the study of important past events that do have relevance to the present and the future.
I see.
So you just can't study just anything that happened in the past. It's not everything that happened in the past that should be considered historical.
I see. But Prof, taking into consideration the education you have given us right now, would you say that in Africa, history is being practiced professionally, as opposed to the West, where you have somebody say that I am a specialized or a professional historian in this particular field?
Yes, you have some.
You hardly hear that in
You have some
Africa.
people in you hardly hear that because history, for a very long time, has been put on the periphery.
Okay.
And so you don't really hear people talking about that. I mean, even you don't have governments employing historians to guide and shape them.
I see.
All the so-called developed countries, I call them so-called developed countries, they all have think tanks, and you have a body of historians that shape policies. But in Africa, you don't really have that. Many of the presidents that you've had of let me use an example, the United States. Many of them studied history in the universities and other institutes of high learning. And so in Africa, yes, you have people like that, and many of them you don't hear about them because they have been confined to the corridors of the academy, where they are professors and so on, and so they only teach and undertake researches. But these researchers are not used. And many of the African historians are celebrated outside Africa, actually. Many of the historians that you have in Ghana, in some of the universities in Ghana, are celebrated outside Africa.
But we cannot see.
Because some of them come up with ideas that at times are anti-establishment, at times are non-partisan, and so some people don't really celebrate what they do. And elsewhere, people really see them as real scholars, and they use their works. And they really always ask them to come and educate them and teach them. And they think that what these people teach them are important. So it is something, it is a context, it is the African context. And we must also understand, history as, something that is done and something that is studied. History has two dimensions.
And studied.
Yes. Every society is historically conscious. Every society. But not every society has this understanding that history should be and can be a discipline. So, for example, I pursue history as a discipline.
Okay.
And it has a certain path, method, skill, science. It's science. History, there is a philosophy of history where history is considered to be what it is. But to know what happened in the past as a professional historian, you must have certain skills. In order to know what happened in the past, you don't have to be a magician. You don't have to conjure. You don't have to come up with something that one will call a fiction. You must be dealing. You have to try to deal with facts and evidence, and you have to follow certain, tested principles in order to get to the past. And I have people who say that, it becomes scientific. And I have people who say that history is written from perspectives, and so you can decide to. And I heard some scholars just recently, because of their debate that emerged around the Founders' Day and so on and so forth. Some people say history is written from perspective. Yes, of course, history is written from perspectives. It's how I'll articulate the fact will be different from how you will articulate the fact. But the evidence is there for all of us to deal with. And so you have to be scientific. You have to endeavor to be objective. If you're not objective, what you produce is bad history, which becomes it is pseudoscience. So there is a path, there is a method, and a methodology. Accepted. Yes, in history that you have to follow. Where you cannot tell me that Ghana did not, independence was not proclaimed for Ghana in 1957. You can tell me that independence was proclaimed for Ghana in 1930. That is wrong. But you can't tell me that because you're writing history from your own perspective that is correct. So there are history, the method in history is scientific. Otherwise it becomes propaganda and bad history.
I see. Thank you very much, Professor Deladem, given us a lot about history. I'm taking a quick break. When I come, I would introduce my next guests.
If you always keep your money in your wallet. Hey, I fought a bear.
Photo Messi.
Apume.
Yamanadam was say.
I feel the baby.
Share. About money, man. My boom.
Hey.
Hey. What fun in Cabo. Hey. You see it? Yellow card. You see it? That card.
I referee. I'm when you cry.
Oh, maybe you're going.
I'm when you cry. I GM mobile money. Ariaba. Akita afun baku. Another baby. So I admire my GM mobile money. A percentage na abanyano. I baby. Maybe here I register. Star 712 hash. I register here.
No, my mom
Ice.
Oh, damn.
Photo
Messi. Photo Messi. I'm papa. I'm sure. Who should be baby? National York.
GN Mobile Money. Total convenience.
The world has become a global village. Happenings in other parts of the world affect Africa directly or indirectly. But how informed are we as Africans living in Africa to understand the seasons and the nuances of globalization? Global Dialogue is a program instituted to bring to your doorsteps phenomena in other parts of the world that affect us positively and negatively on Africa. Join me this and every Sunday between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. as we touch on very critical issues. Global Dialogue, redefining the new Africa.
Hello. This is the She program. You can't she ya. No, I just say it is a ladies' chat room. Eye ma wasem ene ye kan wa ha.
Enyumude wo Ghana ha dey. Imesiafo ye wo yendodoa. Eho behia se de bia ye koni ye be. Ye be hwe ya pomudin. Ye ka pomudin a enye ne se miti ye me ya me na mom ya sitne mu niema ekoso niema e fa ye ho se ma ye didi ye ho komo.
Eye ma wasem ene ye kan wa ha. From your career to your marriage, so mama worry to our health, inyama efaya pomudin ehun inyama yebedi about money as well, finances and our budgeting or buy yama usika ofia kwan best na obehwa obekura usika amano aso eni
deminti ehun behia pa de wobo no wotwe pem oye 8:30 p.m. ukude biara eba betina we free ho oye wu TV set no ho na ahwe Ocean 1 TV.
Eye ma wasem mom die nanso mbema mo benya mo chefa ewom as we bring you these excerpts. Even though entertaining ye ho no, it is for information and for education. Don't miss out on the She Show, the ladies chat room. My name is Swella.
Alright, so you are welcome back. This is Global Dialogue. We are live on Ocean 1 Television from the Republic of Elmina in the Central Region. We are also live on Ahumka 99.5 FM, also from Elmina. Tonight, we are looking at Chinese aid to Africa, for better or for worse. My name is Deladem Kiseih, and I'm in the studio together with Professor Deladem from the History Department of the University of Cape Coast, who has been taking me through some phases, a very deep one, as to why we must study history. And I picked up one thing that as a journalist, I should be interested in history, so that whenever I put out my stories, I should be able to give it a good background to inform the public. We've also been joined in the studio by Dr. Wendy Ansah. He's a sociologist from UCC. Dr. Ansah, good evening.
Good evening.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
I really missed you though.
I miss you too.
I hope the holidays has been good.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just as I started with Professor Boche, how is the admission to your department? How has it been like this?
The truth is, I have not been able to follow closely.
Okay.
Yeah, the numbers. Initially, before the students are waiting their results. Students are. What we heard was that the number was lesser than that of last year. But then I'm of the conviction that when those students were added, those who waited for their results, were added, I'm sure the numbers have shot up quite a bit.
I see.
I think it all has to do with the fact that there is competition all over the place, and also due to the fact that the whole idea of the awaiting result concept in UCC hasn't really caught on well with some of the students, given the fact that we started a bit late. When Legon and Tech had started, we had not really, started. So it's now catching on. People are now realizing, you can wait for your results and come to, UCC.
I see.
Yeah, so I think that basically these are some of the reasons.
Just as we do here always, why must I study sociology at the university? What do I do with that?
Yes, one must appreciate the society he is coming from. Sociology as a discipline scientifically studies society. The word scientific makes it different as compared to any layman who perhaps may observe society and is likely to draw a hasty conclusion. This is so in the light of the fact that somebody may just look at you and then draw, if you are in Elmina, look at you and then look at your behavior and then draw a conclusion about the people of Elmina just because you are in Elmina. But when I come to Elmina, I am not just going to look at one person. I am going to I'll be going through a very rigorous process of collecting information about Elmina before I draw a conclusion on that. And this is what we call a scientific process, where in the first place I need to pick up a number that is representative of the people of Elmina, spread it across the diversified, spectrum of individuals and their backgrounds. How many are married, how many are not married, how many are, Christians, how many are not Christians, how many are in the youthful population, how many are in the aged. With all these things, a layman can never do it. But when a sociologist gets in there, the person will be able to undertake such a rigorous process and draw a valid conclusion about Elmina. And such information is what is used as the basis for policy making. I mean, we normally hear of baseline studies. It has always been sociologists who have been at the forefront, because sociologists have the capacity to establish a very strong relationship between the society, the actors within the society who would have to serve as links through which the society, the members of the society themselves would have to be engaged. Talk of chiefs and all those things. So that is one aspect. The other aspect has to do with the fact that, sociology also studies the cultural dynamics of every society.
Okay.
Prof spoke about history. We have historical sociology, so that is where we merge sociology. That's where we merge history with sociology.
I see.
Go back to time, look at what has happened over the years. I teach social change, so definitely some of the things I teach are quite historical. Go back to time, establish some of the undercurrents of change, and when these undercurrents of change are not known, it would always be very difficult to anticipate what is likely to happen. When you study society and the dynamics, particularly with regard to change, one, you could see that technology has played a very critical role. You could see that institutions have also played very important roles. Talk of the politics, talk of the economy. We've spoken about colonialism over here before.
Yeah.
We've seen how we can outline how colonialism has affected our society. And much as we know such a thing has affected our society, the point is, when you know the effect and you know that such things are also being exhibited currently, you can easily anticipate some of the things that are likely to happen. And all these things fall within the ambit of sociology. And come to think about it, sometimes we ask ourselves, what about business? Somebody doing business, does he need sociology? He needs it very much. Let me tell you something. In Spain, somebody said there was a car, from another country, and then they labeled the car in a particular way. Okay. The car had a meaning in wherever it was coming from. Now, they brought it to Spain, and then people were not buying. Meanwhile, for that particular country's cars, the Spaniards liked it. So why not this particular car? Not knowing the brand name
was offensive.
Meant something offensive in Spain. So they decided not to buy it. Now this is where you need a sociologist in the arena of business. When it comes to marketing, branding, labeling of products, get into the society. We've seen here in some fancy lands where I think one of the guy, I don't know whether he's around, the man managing the Gold Coast Fund in Cape Coast.
Yeah.
He said, as part of their corporate social responsibility, they went to a town in Central Region. They gave them a building. They painted it white. The people were not using the building. Why? Because the people associate the color white with the arrest of their king many years ago. Yes. So if you don't study the culture of the people, you will not even know what to do for them as a businessman with regard to marketing, with regard to corporate social responsibility, with regard to community, engagement and all other things, until you know the people. And these are the things which sociologists go into. And
I see. I guess today we've given you enough. And indeed, both agree that there is a scientific approach to all these things that we are talking about. And so the question would be that if we know all these things, why is it that we are where we are today? Does it mean that policymakers have still not bought into the idea of using professionals like this in their quest to find solutions to our problems as a nation? But I'll leave this one for another day. Let me come to the Chinese aid to Africa. Prof, people have observed that, hey, we've been going to Europe and the Americas, but this time round, China has taken over. Do you see the same in terms of aid to Africa?
Well, I would say as a country, yes, African countries are really going to China. We must also understand that African countries continue to go to their international funding agencies where you have the World Bank and the IMF. These are not like countries openly, even though they are run by a cartel of capitalist countries. Okay, so yes, China is out there and ready to give money out to African countries in order to buy their friendship, in order to get access to their resources, and in order to get them to owe them in the future. Now, if you owe someone, definitely you are subjected to the person's control. That person can come in at any time and say, give me my money. And that person definitely, especially a Shylock one, would like to take his or her pound of flesh. In this particular context, what's the pound of flesh that China would like to take? Resources.
I see.
And China's the money that China, offers to African countries are huge, that many of the African countries can never pay. As individual countries, they will not be able to pay.
We'll be getting to that bit very soon. But help me, at what point did China assume that status of overtaking Europe and America when it comes to providing aid to Africa?
We have to understand that China was once a colony of these historical imperial powers and colonial powers. Britain, France. And China was just like Ghana. Once upon a time, was considered a land of coolies. They were pullers of rickshaws and they were not respected anywhere until a certain ideological revolution occurred.
Revolution?
Yeah, occurred in the 1940s, thereabout. A revolution that tried to, in a way, do away with archaic traditions and also do away with capitalist intrusions and, in a way, create a society that will be nationalistic and one which will run with the ideology of communism. A kind of Chinese communism, not like the Soviet or Russian communism, a homebrewed communism, run with the spirit or in the spirit of Marxism and Maoism. This happened, and a lot of things were removed. When I say things, ideas, infrastructure, things that even remind the Chinese of their colonial past and oppressive past. And new ones were established to give Chinese a new direction. Certain human beings also were removed because it was a revolution and a bloody one, which really went through a civil war. China then started to go within to build. Chairman Mao led this, and many reactionaries were like, why don't you go to America and the rest, because you're suffering. And Mao said, you see, we don't have the technology and anything, but we've got the people. Of course, the demography of China is huge.
Such a huge population.
So we have the people, and we're going to use our brawn to build the things we want to build here. If you need a crane to carry something, we can use the human beings to carry that same thing. So they had to work from within. And China became, in a way, insulated from external pressures. It adopted a kind of one-party state. The Communist Party was the dominant one. And, it pursued this policy of austerity to build within. It was an ideological training where people were made to read a certain book, the Red Book of Chairman Mao, which was to ideologize them and make them to be revolutionary Chinese. Each person in China became a kind of revolutionary cadre to promote Chinese interests first. This was in the 40s. Now in the 50s, China was still developing. And this in the 50s, Ghana got her independence in 1957. In 1955, China was one of the countries that attended the Afro-Asian Conference, which became commonly known as the Bandung Conference, which is 1985. The Gold Coast was represented. Kwame Nkrumah was there
at that conference.
Ghana was the Gold Coast was on its way to become independent. In inverted commas, in 1957. 2 years later, Ghana would become independent. And Ghana was there, the Gold Coast was there, Liberia was there, Sudan was there, Libya was there, Egypt was there, Ethiopia was there. These were the African countries that attended. It was organized in Indonesia. Indonesia was there, Malaysia was there, all the other Asian countries that were evolving, that had become very anti-colonial and against new colonialism were there. And the focus was to build a strong relationship between these once upon a time colonies, to fight against new colonialism and to build a kind of strong economic cooperation between them. So China was there. China was to depend on the others for support, and the others were also to depend on China for support. All of them were to support one another, not to exploit. We have to understand Nkrumah's leftist orientation made him to feel comfortable with the Chinese, because at the time China was also leftist, anti-imperial, anti-colonial, anti-American, and so they were, in a way, brothers in the struggle. Now Ghana gained her independence in 1957. We saw how Kwame Nkrumah tried to, in a way, go the path that China went, going the left path. It didn't succeed. 1957, he was out. Ghana took a different path. China continued, and China was able to build. At a point in time, China now had enough capital within, because it was able to do it. It had enough capital within. And so politically, China remained communist or socialist, if you like. But economically now, China had to, in a way, step out and use the capital it had generated. Because once you build capital, you must use it. So now China had to step out and use the capital. And China realized that there were other people around that needed the capital. Who were those people? African countries. And so it was ready to give that. And also China was ready to use that capital to create a kind of friendship, as an international brotherhood, so to speak, buying that kind of brotherhood. Because we have to understand that China was also not in the good books of the Western powers.
Okay.
And China needed a team to support China. So if African countries, would like to take the money in order to support China at the UN and other international, on other international platforms, then China was ready to do that. So China then started to make these gestures and overtures to African countries that, listen, I've got the money. Once upon a time we were friends, we were in the same boat, but now I'm better off and I'm going to support you. But it's the Trojan horse. We have to always say, hey, listen, beware of the gift that comes from the Greeks, the Trojan horse. You don't know what is in that wooden horse. There's a story of the Greeks presenting a horse to the Trojans as a gift. But inside the horse, a wooden horse, and it said it was a war between the Greeks and the Trojans. The Greeks tried to really take over Troy, but Troy was a walled city, so they couldn't get in. They fought, they couldn't. So they devised a plan that, okay, they will build a big horse and leave it outside the walls of Troy, right? And they'll put someone there who will, in a way, allow himself to be captured. And when the Trojans ask the person, why have you left this horse? You say, oh, it's actually a gift from our gods and we decided to leave it out here. And so, but they were all ready to put soldiers into the belly of the horse, so that when the horse is taken into the city of Troy, the soldiers will come out at night and attack. So it's a Trojan horse. What is actually the real intention of China? As I said, it is basically about capital. China has become a capitalist power, also, and is ready to use, that kind of capital to get resources from Africa. Note that China, the population is growing. They need resources, right? And you can't really depend on what is within China only. They must get it from outside. And today it is, some countries actually will go out and attack other countries and take their resources. I don't think China wants to do that. No, China wants to in a way come in and get you to give your resources to it. We know what the United States have done in other countries. They actually attack and take. But China doesn't want to do that. China will rather come in and say, I'm giving you this loan, but at the end of the day, I know you're not going to be able to pay it, so they'll take your resources. So before China became capitalist, China was not interested in coming into seas. In fact, when you look at the time of Kwame Nkrumah, there were Chinese experts who came to Ghana to help Ghana to build certain things and to even help train freedom fighters in Ghana.
Really?
Yes, they were training them, and this will be used against Kwame Nkrumah when he's overthrown. They will announce to Ghanaians that Kwame Nkrumah imported trainers of terrorists to come and train people how to use grenades and how to use Molotov cocktails and how to use dangerous weapons. So we have African countries once upon a time had, I would say, a kind of honest partnership with China as a result of the Bandung Conference, and the desire to fight against neocolonialism. But today, it appears that there is no real partnership. It is not one of altruism or giving you money because you need it, but it's more of a capitalist gimmick where I give you money, tell you, oh, you need it, I'm supporting you, but in reality, I'm just in a way bribing you. I'm giving you money so that you'll be indebted to me and tied to my apron strings. And at the end of the day, I ask you, give me your kitchen, give me your bathroom, and give me your house.
This is interesting. Thank you for that historical background. But Dr. Ansah, the narrative has been that of over 3 billion investment in Africa by the Chinese, there is not much to show for that quantum of money that they have spent here. And so Africa ought to be careful.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that this topic about China and Africa, whether better or worse, it has generated many perspectives. As it stands now, scholars have written, and looking at all the writings that have come up, you could categorize all the write-ups into 3. So we have the Afro pessimist, who believe that whatever China is doing doesn't have anything good to offer.
They don't see anything good about it at all.
And we have the Afro optimist, who believe that yes, whatever China is doing is very useful to Africa. And so these are scholars who operate at 2 extreme ends. Then we have the hybrids, who are known as the Afro pragmatists, who believe that whatever China is doing, its usefulness or otherwise would depend on how the recipient countries, in other words, the African countries, would use them, and how they would respond and what they would do after they have received whatever they have received from China. The reality is that, ever since China started engaging Africa, the amount of money involved here has reached the tune of $50 billion.
$50 billion. Okay.
$50 billion. And some have been used as credit lines, so it's like, come, we'll give you, you want money. Here they use their private firms to issue or sometimes used for bonds and all those things. Others are used for normal aid, grants and all those things, and then others are also used for development funds, certain funds they would establish, and then others are also used to encourage private actors to move, so those into mining, those into manufacturing, those into the service industry and all those things. So the point is that China has established itself both economically, and of course the political linkage is also very, very clear, because China wouldn't bring in such amount of money using its businessmen alone for you to think that it is just a cohort of economic actors.
Okay.
The political actors are also at the forefront of all these things. And in this regard, it reflects a new wave of political economy, which we call political economy heterodoxy, which, brings in, theoretically, sees a fusion of state and the market. And for that reason, practically, you see the state and businessmen coming together to operate, okay, and move into certain other states. So you see the state offering money. So the Chinese have the Exim Bank, the Export and Import Bank, and huge amounts of money. I think about 10 billion has been earmarked. In the case of Africa, has been earmarked for monies for imports and exports. So what do we need from Africa? These are the things we need from Africa. Money has been allocated, and that is what is used to import goods from Africa. What do we need to send out to Africa? Money has been voted to produce what they know they would send to Africa and sell. So, as a start, and the Exim Bank is managed by the state, but businessmen can go in, pick some, produce whatever they have to produce, and sell to Africa. So you see a very close partnership within China between the state and the markets. So, and business, and for that reason, you could see that even at certain points when the business actors are struggling, the state comes in to support. Not just to support, but to encourage and to finance. 3 things. So if you look at what China is doing, China is a reflection of, the response as far as the current exigencies of global political economy is concerned, where the state alone cannot take up the role of development. Neither can business alone take up the role of development, but a fusion of the two, is needed to promote development. And the development is not just about what you do within, but it's also about what you go outside to do. And so far as what you go outside to do would aid your economic interest. As Prof mentioned, why is China in Africa? The resources, one. Africa has very huge resources. The oil is available, and China's economy has also grown to the point that many of them are moving into the middle class. And when the population is such, and when people move into the middle class, it is characterized by a particular consumption pattern.
Okay.
So the people need cars in their homes. They are not going to use ordinary wood fuel. They are going to use gas. Then they are going to use air conditioning and all those. So electricity also comes in here. Now the point is that as people move into the middle class and the demand increases, then of course it means that we need to provide them with the necessary energy that they need. Okay, and the energy cannot be found in China, so China would have to move into other countries and obtain that source of energy which they need to supply to their citizens. And that is one of the reasons why they are here. China is also here because Africa's population is quite substantial. And for that reason, there is a need to create that market for themselves as Chinese, so that their goods will sell. So China, and of course they do this strategically in the sense that they don't just go to, sometimes they would isolate some of the African countries and deal with them. Sometimes they would lump African countries together, and sometimes, with regard to certain products, they will locate some African countries and then deal with them. For example, when it comes to a higher company which produces cooling products, fridge, air conditioners, and all those things, they locate countries in West Africa. They wouldn't go to South Africa. They will come to West Africa because of the temperature here. So now they are in Nigeria, they are in Ghana, and other West African countries, and this is where the areas where they are selling their product. So China, China is not doing, practically you could say that China is not doing anything necessarily new as compared to what America did, what UK did, what Germany did, what European countries have been doing over the years. And for that reason, it stands to support the notion that China is the new exploiter in town. And that is where these issues come. And you could see clearly that when it comes to aid, the strings are attached, just like the Europeans have been doing. When it comes to trade, yes, picking Ghana alone, the trade relations between China and Ghana alone suggests that whatever we export to China is less than 10% of whatever China brings here. And the point is that if you keep on importing, in terms of employment generation, wherever you are importing from, you are creating employment for them,
which we know all these years.
So. So these are the issues, and we are thinking about currency. Now the cedi is somewhere almost 5 to a dollar and all those things, and we are asking, the fundamentals are that it is because we keep on importing.
Now, Dr. Ansah, let's look at it this way. You are a sociologist. We understand that in Africa, Ghana, for instance, has the highest number of students learning Chinese language in China.
Yes.
And they followed it up by turning some of our universities into Chinese language centers. What do you see with that development?
Yeah, once again, that is also a replication, of what some colonizers did. We have the Goethe Institute by Germany.
Okay.
We had Alliance Française from France. Here it is the recognition of the power of language and its economic effects. Language has its own connection with lifestyle. Language has its own connection with economic attractions. So at this point, if somebody gets to learn the language, his desire to go to that country is high. And if I want to go to that country, look, the airline alone, it would benefit. When I go there I'm going to spend, if nothing at all, tourism and all other things. I may even want to school there for further studies. So if I learn Chinese here, I may want to pursue my master's over there. And over there, yes, they might give you scholarship, but the fact is that all the money they give you spend within. But then you will come back to your home country, but you wish to go there again. That is where you would send money into their economy. So that is why China is doing all these things. I mean, the idea of soft power is clear here.
I see.
Here we're not forcing you. It's a persuasive approach to make sure we attract you. And when we attract you, we don't just attract you with your physical being, body, soul, and spirit. We also attract your economic resources.
I see. This is Global Dialogue, and we are live on Ocean One Television from Elmina, and on Ahomka 99.5 FM also in Elmina. Tonight we are looking at this topic, Chinese aid to Africa, for better or for worse. But I've just been notified that there is the hybrid pragmatics there.
Yes.
Okay. So I would have to find a way to describe them. But Professor Butchie, this language thing, my president was in China, and we have somebody interpreting. That tells me that the Chinese president cannot speak English. Now, they have established their institutions of their language centers in Africa. In Ghana, I'm yet to hear us, Ghanaians, Africans, establishing any of our language centers in China. And we call it a partnership.
Yes. So it tells you that there's no partnership, right? If
I'm tempted to
there's
think
real
so.
partnership, then it should be a two-way traffic.
Okay.
But as it stands now, it's just one-way traffic. And Doctor has brilliantly talked about, the power of language. When Alexander the Great, the so-called great, started to conquer, trying to really institutionalize what today we call globalization. Globalization has been going on since I don't know when, but Alexander the Great, as I said, so-called great, wanted to, in a way, globalize the world in the image of the Greeks. And he wanted all the people that the Greeks conquered to learn the Greek language, to become Hellenized, because he understood that language carries a certain philosophy, and it really conveys a people's aspirations as well as how they see the world and everything. So you have that being done not through coaxing or a kind of dialogue. It was imposed on people by a conquering power. So China is stepping out. English was imposed on people by the imperial power we know as Britain. You have the French imposing French on the spaces that they colonized. You see, colonialism involves the arrangement of space in one's interest, and that space can be physical or mental. And if you're arranging a physical space made up of human beings, you arrange the economy, you also arrange their language in your interest. So now, as he said, China is doing what the classical, so to speak, the classical colonial powers did before the 1960s, which we refer to as the decade of independence. China is doing the same thing by imposing, this time not using force, but using soft power, which in itself is a kind of force. So it comes in and says, well, you need to learn Chinese because it's a classical language. It's a classical language. It's not just a language of a country that was formed in 1947 or a country that evolved out of a revolution. China is old. You have to learn that language. But you have to learn it because we think that it will benefit us as Chinese. They'll tell you it will benefit the two of us.
Okay.
But actually, you are being made to bend to fit. So that is your benefit. You are being made to bend to fit. Chinese way. So,
I like this.
So you're not benefiting, you're bending to fit. To become like a pseudo-Chinese, just as the Arabs will tell people you have
Which
to learn.
you can never be.
Yes. So it is not one of partnership. It is a way of controlling and dominating you. In the 1950s, when Ghana gained independence, and Du Bois was in Ghana.
Okay.
Du Bois came to Ghana when Ghana gained her independence after 1957, and so you had Du Bois being also anti-American when the United States kicked him out. In first, Du Bois was saying, "Oh, African Americans stay in America. You don't have to repatriate. America is also yours." And when America beat Du Bois and told him that you can never be a full American, Du Bois then ran to Ghana because Kwame Nkrumah gave him place here. When he came, he was so anti-American. He was speaking to Africans, and he wrote a speech. He got delivered in China. He was telling Africans to learn the Chinese language.
Really?
Yes.
At that time?
Yes. At that time, he said that we should learn the Chinese language, but we have to put it in context.
Okay.
We have to put it in context. he was asking Africans to learn the Chinese language as a way of creating solidarity between the two countries. He thought that real partnership really existed and was going to exist, in the future, because he passed.
Between Africa and China?
Yes.
Okay.
I wish he would be here to see what has happened. So he said we should learn. But he also asked Chinese people to learn African languages.
That would have defined the partnership we're talking about.
Exactly. But as it stands now, we are not having that kind of partnership. No one is learning it. Rather, some of us, again in the spirit of neoliberal economics, everything has been commodified and everything is being sold. So some people actually are not advocating for this thing to go on, that where Ghanaians and other Africans learn Chinese because it is, okay, let's call it acquisition of a knowledge of a sort. But they think that at the end of the day, it will, in a way, endear Ghanaians and other Africans to Chinese so that China will give us money. At the end of it all.
That is what we're thinking.
That is what some politicians and policymakers in tertiary institutions and others think. That it will endear, to make us appear as good boys and girls to China. And China says, they are learning our language, so we'll give them some computers. We send their students to China for holidays. We allow them to practice Tai Chi and Kung Fu, learn how to eat with chopsticks. It's not only about the language, it's also how to even eat with chopsticks, right? It is the way of, really, I don't want to use the nickname of Oboba J. Adolfo. He was Black Chinese. The Black Chinese.
Whether there was something like that.
So well, historically, I mean, if we read the works of Runoko Rashidi, African Presence in the East, in fact, ancient Africans contributed in the building of the Chinese civilization.
I see.
Early Chinese were black. There is evidence, clear evidence. Just as you had black samurai. So you have, when you talk about their African dispersion, it goes back into time.
I see.
So here we're talking about the creation of a new black Chinese that is in a way a serf. I wouldn't call a slave, a serf to the Chinese, the China that we have today. So this language thing is a complex one. It is about control, soft power, and at the same time, for some of us in Africa, policymakers, they think that by learning Chinese, we will become good boys and girls to China, and they will give us, the toffees and.
I see. On this note, I'm going to take a break. When I come back, we'll be looking specifically at some of the interventions, the investment that China is trying to make in Africa. We'll zero in on Ghana, for instance. I understand that under the new partnership, they are going to construct a new headquarters for the Ghana Armed Forces. We have a stadium here in Cape Coast donated by the Chinese government, and we are hearing that under the new partnership, we are going to see some expansion. And so, what next? Stick and stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you always keep your money in your wallet.
Hey, Afatogbe.
Afume.
Apume.
Yamina Adam was say.
Afume baby.
Shay. About money, man. My
Hey.
Hey. Often in trouble. Hey. You see, Yellow card. Kiseih, red card.
Referee. I'm when you cry.
Oh, maybe you're going.
I'm when you cry. A GM mobile money. Ariaba. Akita afun baku. Another baby. So I had mama GM mobile money. A percentage na abanyano. I have baby. Maybe here there. I got register. Star 712 hash. I register here.
Ice. Oh, dear. Obodo Messi. Obodo Messi. One papa. Yamin shop. Don't you be baby? National York.
GN Mobile Money. Total convenience.
The world has become a global village. Happenings in other parts of the world affect Africa directly or indirectly. But how informed are we as Africans living in Africa to understand the seasons and the nuances of globalization? Global Dialogue is a program instituted to bring to your doorsteps phenomena in other parts of the world that affect us positively and negatively on Africa. Join me this and every Sunday between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. as we touch on very critical issues. Global Dialogue, redefining the new Africa.
The town, oh, no. Free.
All right, so you're welcome back. You are live with us on Ocean One Television from the Republic of Elmina in the Central Region and on Ahomka 99.5 FM, also in Elmina. We are discussing tonight Chinese aid to Africa, for better or for worse. And I have in the studio Professor Deladem. He's an associate professor of history, UCC History Department, and of course, Dr. Wendy Ansah from the Sociology Department of UCC. My name is Deladem Kiseih. Now, I heard the Chinese president proclaim that China will support Ghana in achieving the Ghana Beyond Aid that has been proclaimed. Dr. Ansah, is it in the interest of China that Ghana moves beyond aid?
Well, we need to separate political rhetorics from political realities.
Help me understand this too.
we need to separate economic talks from economic realities. You know, let's even subject this statement to ordinary lexical analysis.
Okay.
Doesn't it smack of contradiction?
How
do you give aid to make somebody come out of aid?
You can't give aid to help somebody come out of aid.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying that the rhetorics are different from reality, because over the years, no country has ever developed on the altar of aid. No country. Even China, which has developed over the years. The processes with which China came to where it is now wasn't because of aid. Yes, wasn't because of aid. So you can't give aid and use it as a means to get somebody out of aid. Prof gave a very nice historical antecedent to where China is now. If I want to add something, in the 1970s, the open door policy by China was what brought them to where they are now. You know, what does China do? Open up, let investment come.
Okay.
Now, in addition to the investment, Prof mentioned the nationalistic culture. use the nationalistic culture to push the people to adopt the technology which is coming from outside. And let us contextualize it, use our population as an advantage, and then nationalize the assets which the investors have brought, send them away. By then the taste has been developed, and then capture the market. That is what China did. China didn't become what it is now because of aid. So if the Chinese president claims that he is going to give Ghana aid to help Ghana come out of aid, it's a contradiction, and it's not going to happen. And this is what our political actors must know, because somebody cannot take a path to development and give you a different path towards development. Singapore at a point realized that aid cannot work. Malaysia realized aid cannot work. Now they told themselves, let us look within. But that's why, initially we spoke about the humanities. What do we need? We need a mind. We need a culture. We need a mindset of nationalism, loyalty, and patriotism.
And that is
what we lack
now.
Even among our political actors. Because why? Now we're going to bring the figures out. I think now the push is there, so we'll bring it out. I have the paper there already.
Okay.
I was just waiting.
Okay.
The figures will come out. Why do we waste 40 billion US Ghana cedis? Then equivalent to 10 billion. Okay, and going for 1 billion.
Really?
Of course.
Under the previous Chinese agreement.
That is
the
even
3
from
billion.
That was even way earlier. You get up. So here the question is, who wasted that 40 billion Ghana cedis? Because it is the Auditor General who came up with that report. Now the push is that he's supposed to chase those people for the money.
That we're going for a loan of $3 billion.
Yes. Meanwhile, we had wasted 10 billion here dollars. Yes. Because the 40 billion Ghana cedis then was equivalent to 10 billion US dollars. So what are we talking about here?
So these are all financial engineering that inure to the benefit of corrupt politicians.
So
and they put these things out there to.
So if you are going to give aid to help somebody come out of aid, that is not going to work. Why? You see, because there are political actors. You see, we have studied the whole dynamics of aid, and one thing we have come to discover: the narratives earlier on had been that because of the strings attached and all those things, that is why countries which were receiving aid were not receiving it. But now the narratives have changed. One, aid is not working because the political actors within the countries that are the receiving end of aid are themselves beneficiaries of the aid.
So corruption.
Sometimes exactly one is corruption. So let me give you an example of the corruption that goes with it.
Okay.
Quite recently, in the SWR regime, the American government gave us some amount of money. Now the argument was that that amount of money was supposed to be used for certain, electrification projects and all those things. Now, this political actor comes to tell us that as part of the, aid,
agreement.
Okay, we're supposed to use a portion of that money to purchase American cars. Right? Now he was asked to list the cars. He started listing. Then he started mentioning Lexus. Where does Lexus come from? Isn't it a Japanese car? Meanwhile, that political actor was saying that a part of the package, the cars we are supposed to purchase are supposed to come from America. Meanwhile, Lexus is not, and it had been listed. It was part of the list.
Well, maybe
I'll show you the document.
It was made in China.
How?
They have a factory there that produces Lexus.
It doesn't work that way. You see, so this is where you see political actors becoming beneficiaries of the aid, and that is why they will never stop going in for aid.
It's always been like that. Dead aid.
Exactly.
Moyo.
Yeah. You see, so these are the things we need to be thinking about. And how? we go in for aid, and as part of the conditions, they will tell you that rationalize your public sector. Don't recruit. So teachers will not be recruited, nurses will not be recruited. Yet we are talking about a very high nurse-patient ratio. Who cares? The politician will never care. Why? Because when he's sick, he goes outside. And then they will also tell you that don't increase fuel, and all those things. So but we are here. Realistic. Our politicians use the V8 and all those things, and they are entitled to free fuel. So who loses? That's what I'm saying. That even when you take corruption out of the mattress, okay, you could see that clear actions and decisions of the political actors do not make them suffer out of any conditionality associated with the aid, and for that reason they will keep on going for it. Because in any case, when the aid is given, most of the projects that are given, you would always see politicians part of the list of either expertise or actors who are supposed to be given some honoraria. So why would they go stop the aid? So I think that going forward, there is no way aid would ever move a country out of the quagmire of underdevelopment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams.
To add to it, I think that I'm trying to again understand what the Chinese premier leader was saying, that it will help Ghana to achieve its aim or its goal
of Ghana beyond
I think it is to make Ghana not to look in the direction of the West, right? So gonna help Ghana not to go and ask for aid from the US or Britain or Germany or the IMF, but to go to China. So I'm gonna help you means that don't go to them. I'm gonna give you all that you need.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'll be giving you aid. So it is a way of, is a way of getting rid of the resistant competitors or rivals. So how is China going to really, get Ghana to become aid free? Is it going to say that, hey, listen, I am going to give you money, I'm taking all my Chinese people away, I'm just going to build everything for you, I'm going to train your people, I'm not going to take anything from Ghana? No, I think that's not what China wants to do. China wants to say, hey, I want you to look in my direction alone. Don't look at the IMF. Don't look. So I'm going to help you to free yourself from the aid that you've always been taking. But in helping you, I must commit resources. That itself is aid. And at the end of the day, I will still get what I want. And as you rightly said, many politicians will be so happy to do it because, it is a way of getting their cuts too. He rightly said that aid itself contributes to corruption. You see, the aid that came to Zaire corrupted. It was helped to corrupt. What's his name? Mobutu. Right? France gave aid to Central African Republic. A lot of money. They gave it to Bokassa. Jean Bedel Bokassa, who now became emperor. He called himself emperor of the Central African Republic and bought everything that he used for his coronation from France. Yet France knew that this guy was corrupt. They gave the money to him and he went and bought the stuff from France. So it is something that the aid giver is aware of, that I'm giving this, and I know it's not going to trickle down to the ordinary people.
I've heard that on several occasions.
Yes, it's for...
I said, this money we're giving them, it will all come back to us very soon.
Yeah, it's not going to trickle to the ordinary person.
Let me take one good. It says the Chinese president stressed the endorsement by his government of the vision of building a Ghana beyond aid by President Akufo-Addo and urged his Ghanaian counterpart to be resolute in realizing this vision, not only for Ghana but also for the entire African continent, as it would lead to the growth of independent sovereign nations. Independent sovereign nations acting in their own interest and with their own resources. Now you're talking about taking some money to build a railway sector infrastructure, and then you take a bauxite for God knows how many years, and if by that time the bauxite is not able to pay for the money we have received, then they will have to look elsewhere until we are able to pay. And this is what the Chinese president is telling us.
So
we are told that Sudan benefited about $4.6 billion by the year 2013. What difference has it made? Nigeria about $3 billion. South Africa also benefited immensely from China, all in the billions. But critics are saying that there is not much to show for most of this aid that came to Africa. And some are also defending the current Chinese president, Xi Jinping, that he is fighting corruption, in that when the aid is released, there are corrupt officials from China who connive or work with the African counterpart to make sure they share the money. But this particular president is not taking that lightly. He is seriously fighting against corruption. I don't know how you take this, whether you think there is something good to show for all this aid. Prof.
Well, for me, I don't see anything tangible. I mean, all these things that you see around are just shadows. If they build something for you, at the end of the day, are you going to be able to maintain them?
Because we have the Cape Coast Stadium, for instance, we are not going to be able to maintain this.
Exactly.
The electricity alone, is a burden.
Yes. So for me, they know that these are just not the real forms. The real forms are actually what is in the head and what you can do all the time. So you just give it to them one time and you get a lot of things from them. But talking about billions and all this, see, I'm not an economist. So it's a bit, but billions and so on and so forth. Let's look at the United States of America. What really makes the American dollar powerful?
Tell me.
It's the military might of the United States. It's just the military might of the United States that's behind the American dollar. That today the American dollar is the international currency. You see, you even have to buy oil. When you sell oil, it's called petrodollar. Right? But who produces, who is giving oil to the rest of the world? I mean, we talk about Saudi Arabia and the rest. Okay. So why is it not the Saudi Arabian currency?
And it's dollar.
Right, and it's the dollar. So there is something behind the dollar. It's the American military might that's behind the dollar. So the paper you get is nothing if you don't have a certain power. It's either you must have military power or you must be productive. You must be producing things. So African countries will keep on receiving billions and so on and so forth. You will only spend. We keep spending. We buy. We import. We spend. But others are producing. China is producing. I hear that every village has some kind of factory or an industry or whatever. And they produce the things that they need. They produce their cell phones, they produce other things that they themselves will use in their villages. Right? So it is not about the money. They are not interested in printing money or receiving money. They're interested in producing things that other people will come and buy. So even if they give you the money, ultimately you will go
and buy from them.
Now
we are trying to move towards that era of production, and we understand one district, one factory, and all these things are happening. would China be happy that Africa, and for that matter Ghana, owns a lot of factory producing all the cell phones? So therefore it means that China cannot bring cell phones here and sell. And all the air conditioners you're talking about, if we have those factories established, for instance in Ghana, how happy would China be if indeed they said they are supporting us in our campaign for how do you call it, Ghana Beyond Aid?
Yeah, so that is why we need to be very, very, truthful to ourselves, that it takes production to progress.
It takes production.
Exactly. It takes production to progress. When you look at the analysis of economic growth as espoused by W.W. Rostow, every country starts from a traditional stage, moves to the preconditions for takeoff stage, gets to the takeoff stage, then gets to the stage of, high mass consumption. You see, with the high stage of high mass consumption, that is when production is taking place and consumption is also taking place. But much of the production takes place within. Okay, it goes outside, but even when it goes outside and others are also coming in, there is always either there's either parity, or you make sure whatever goes outside is more than whatever comes inside, in terms of value, not in terms of quantity. So at this point, even if you are going in for aid, the question is, what are you using it for? Okay, the only context within which aid may, I'm using the word may make a country come out of it's under development is when the aid itself is being used for something productive. But for all the aids given, as part of the conditions, you are not supposed to use the money for something productive.
Exactly.
Use it for infrastructure and social services, which is then going to create the so-called enabling environment. That's why with all these statements, we've heard these statements before.
Yeah.
Not from the Chinese president, but from the classical colonizers. We've heard them mention that. At a point, UK, IMF, don't they mention corruption and all those things? Don't they mention them? But we keep on seeing the corrupt practices associated with the aid, yet they still give us what we claim we need. So what the Chinese president is, and as I said, what China is doing is a clear replica of all that we've seen before. Okay,
so we are not
so we shouldn't see it as new. There's nothing new.
I see.
So we are then supposed to ask ourselves, what then do we have to do within? Okay, the reality is that winning yourself of aid is very difficult. It can't take just a radical move. All right, if we want to use the East Asian countries as a model, the point is that initially when that policy was encouraged, countries that tried it didn't work for them. Winning yourself from aid just once. So what countries decided to do, especially Singapore decided to do, was to let aid and internal productive activity take a dialectical approach. As they keep on winning themselves from aid, they increase their internal mechanisms, which would make them generate more revenue. So what did they then do? They then had to introduce technology. Look within, start production. What do we need? Their question was, what do we need then? So sometimes that is why we also ask ourselves, with what our local producers are producing, is it really necessary for the Ghanaian market? What does the Ghanaian market need? Everybody is using a mobile phone. Why can't we think of producing mobile phones?
No.
In our homes, television is there. Why can't we think about producing television? Now, when it comes to food, canned food is becoming very popular. Why can't we concentrate on production of such things? Fish is becoming quite, people are now appreciating the need. Why don't you have to come?
They are very expensive.
I'm coming from Hawaii. We went to Atimpoku. Tilapia is still being organized. at the traditional setting. The water body over there, it is just full of, the machine is there, it is not dredging. So, and yet we import tilapia from other countries. Now our food import cover has reached $2 billion US. So I think that going forward, the opportunities in here are much more than what we go out there as aid. It is now important for us to, as the Malaysians did, they said they did 4 things. They sacrificed, they worked hard, okay, they avoided, they introduced a national culture that said that if it is coming from outside, our attention will be less on that. Ghana, Vietnam, Dominican Republic, they have their product here. Angela, if you want, I will take pictures of that and show it to you. Vietnam. I didn't even know. I bought the stuff and then I looked at where it was made. Vietnam. I'll take pictures and show it to you. So where are we going as Ghanaians? And these are stuff we can produce here.
And they brought it all the way into our country.
So I think that
dollars.
Exactly. So I think that we need to develop, a new wave of. I teach political economy, so now we are introducing the new wave of political economy, which we call cultural political economy, which will not just look at the structural, economic, and political issues, but come down to the micro level and look at the mindset behind some of these economic and political dynamics.
Doc, I just want to ask you, because you said that Malaysia said it sacrificed,
yes,
it worked hard.
Yes.
Okay, so sacrifice means that it had to follow a certain path of austerity.
Exactly.
Under what political umbrella or regime did it do that?
Yes. So this
that is very important.
Very important.
What kind of
very important.
Now, finally, let's look at it this way. With the intrusion of China, America, and Europe, what do you think they will be thinking now as we speak? We have a military agreement with the US. Under this new partnership with China, there is a military agreement in there. Apart from building an army headquarters for us, just like the Indians build the presidency, they are also going to train the police, train our peacekeepers, and all those stuff. What do you think America will be thinking? Must Africa or Ghana go for every kind of military agreement? I don't get it.
Well, I think.
What would America be thinking?
I think America will not be happy. But at the same time, America will weigh what it will gain or what it is gaining from its existing agreement with Ghana. Because I'm sure America knows exactly what Ghana is doing. And so if it doesn't really go, it doesn't really serve American interests, or it defeats America's purpose of being in Ghana, America will actually advise Ghanaians. But talking about not only the military thing, the economic thing. To use a metaphor, I think that they have all become vultures. I mean, the classical colonial powers, they have all been neo-colonial vultures. China has come in, so they all friends, even though they have different colors.
I see.
And at times they have different ideologies. Russia and the United States. Putin and Trump. I mean, United States and Russia, we go back in the time, they were not friends because of ideological reasons. But today you have, I think Trump is married to a Russian, right? Trump's wife is a Russian. Or some I think he's an Eastern, I don't know if he's Russian, but from Eastern Europe or something like that. But Trump is also not an enemy of Putin, right? So to speak. So you will have these diplomatic, standoffs.
I see.
But when you go deep down, you realize that many of the powers, because they are capitalists, they all want to exploit Africa.
I see. This is Global Dialogue. We want to activate the phone line now. So for those of you who are watching us live on television, the number is on your screen. When you call, please lower the volume on your TV set and let us hear you. But for those listening on radio, the number to call is 020-7566-185. 020-7566-185. 020-7566-185. Last week I was telling you that, hey, where we are getting to, if we don't stop this stupid politics, partisan politics, we would continue to be here. This is the time to come together as a country, especially for the African youth, so that our leaders would make the right decisions on our behalf. But the American jealousy, do you see that, Karen?
Well, there are two possibilities here. You know, most of these countries are very, very difficult to predict sometimes. You know, so there are two possibilities. That's why I wouldn't want to be very certain about what they will do. So there are two possibilities here. I mean, given some of the historical antecedents as far as, you know, American presidency has been, and some of their comments, especially coming from Bush Jr. and then Obama, the fact that at a point they discovered there was no way they could compete with China. Okay, Bush said, if we can't compete, we need to cooperate. When Obama came, he didn't stop that because he realized China has become a powerful force, you know. So now there's a need then to come together. I mean, as far as China and America are concerned, and then promote a single interest. Yes, you know. So what China is doing may not be a surprise to America. Who knows? It could be, I mean, an arranged something which, you know, China is supposed to come from here, let's move. Because you see, these countries may also, you know, be taking cues from certain things that happened, really among the non-aligned countries then, who decided to operate between the two.
Okay, I have a caller. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Your name and where you calling from?
I'm Kwekwe Jamie.
Calling
from 7 days of Anko.
Let's hear you, my brother.
7 days of Anko.
Okay, let's hear you, Kweku.
Okay, my brother, with China. Okay, China. They started from somewhere. We knew China was a socialist state and moved all the way to capitalist. And that has been the ideology they are following. Let's come to Ghana. Ghana practiced socialist 8 years, capitalist 8 years, socialist 8 years, capitalist 8 years. So that back and forth, that is what is not helping us. Let's see which of these ideologies that is the best. If capitalist is the best, we all follow the capitalist way. So NDC will come still practicing capitalist, NPP will come capitalist. If we follow that, then we have a headway. But if 8 years of socialist, 8 years of capitalist, even if you are human being, and you have been treated like that, you will be poor. Because there is no pragmatic process that they take you through. Is that right? So we should know the type of ideology that will be best for Ghana, and all parties should follow that process. Me, I believe capitalism is the best so far, because China has moved away from socialism and now doing well. Then it is good that we also follow the capitalist way. Is that right? That is what I can say for now.
Thank you very much, Kweku. You really made me laugh this evening. Right now, I know when you approach some of them and you ask what is socialism, that is what we understand your party believes in. That is their ideology. I don't think they will be able to explain to you the direction in which they are taking us as far as socialism is concerned. Talk to the so-called capitalists, and they'll tell you property, it means property owning democracy. But you can also come in with your calls. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, my name is David. I'm calling from Cape Coast.
Let's hear you, my brother.
Yeah, I want to make a contribution to the show.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe that I don't think we taking money from these superpowers is really a bad thing. Because if you look at Europe after the World War II, they took actually aid from the United States through the International Construction Bank. But they had the institutional framework and the social framework in place in order to make sure that this aid that was taken from the United States of America were used judiciously to develop their country. So I believe that instead of us to actually always saying that we cannot really utilize the aid properly, we can actually put the framework, the institutional and social framework in place in order to utilize these resources for our development. Because if you go to Rwanda now, they are using aid. If you go to Rwanda, they are using aid fantastically to develop their country. South Korea, they use aid to develop their country, and many other countries around the world have utilized aid. Now, if we actually attain that point, we don't want to depend on aid, then are we ready to adopt protectionism? Because now in this world, it's competitive. We have liberalized our economy, free trade. We cannot be able to compete with the advanced economy of the Western world. So we must be ready. We need bold political leaders. And if you look at Libya, that's what Gaddafi tried to do. But look at what happened. They demolished and decimated the economy and the political stability of Libya. So we must be ready. The leaders must be willing to even die in order to develop this country. I thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you very much for contributing. I know my panel members here would also have a bite on your position. 020-7566-185. 020-7566-185. You can call in and let's have your contribution as far as this subject on the table is concerned. Do we have a caller on the line? Hello. Okay. So the last call I was talking about.
Yes, actually, that is a fine submission, but at the same time, I think that we can look at it from another perspective. He rightly said that it's doable, that you can African leaders can really put their countries on the path of self-renewal. He mentioned Gaddafi. He said so it's doable. People have done it, or even we're about to get there. He made mention of Europe. Now we have to put it in its proper context. The aid that Europe received, what kind of Europe are we talking about? Western Europe or Central Europe or Eastern Europe? The Europe that we're talking about is the Europe that decided to go the capitalist way. America wanted to set an example. This was during the time of the Cold War. And America wanted to tell the rest of the world that if you follow our path, you will succeed.
Okay, let's pick a caller. Hello, good evening. Hello. Do we have a caller on the line? Hello. Okay, it's not here. So
if you look, for example, at Germany, Germany, just one country, you had the East and the West. The Eastern side was under the Soviets, Soviet Union. Western was under Germany. Germany committed, America committed, they had a Marshall Plan, committed resources. So America and the capitalist spirit basically, used, it wasn't, the money was not in the hands of just ordinary Europeans. America oversaw or supervised how this money will be used to advance these capitalist countries that will then become, points of attraction to, so that other countries that may choose to follow the Soviet Union will then look and say, look at what America has done. So we must look at that. Now we talk about South Korea. Again, America wanted to set an example. South Korea and North Korea, remember America fought the war with North Korea. So then it had to support South Korea so that South Korea will become America's ally in that part of the world, and also to demonstrate to their brothers and sisters and cousins in North Korea that, listen, you better join South Korea. But hey, let's take America out of the equation and let South Korea go. And we will see what will happen.
I see.
So it is not as if that the aid is something that automatically helps countries
but
to
it's
grow.
not obvious that in Africa, as we speak today, he cited, for instance, Rwanda. We do understand they have the structures, and we have a strong man at the helm of affairs. In Africa, and let's say Ghana, that is lacking.
So I think the point he made, I agree with some of the points. The issue of institutional framework is very, very critical. There is no way you can go in for aid without any framework.
Guidance is on paper.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean,
let me pick this caller. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. I think I'm having a problem with my lines now, but you can keep trying. 020-7566-185. 020-7566-185. And let's have your take on this subject. Dr. Ansah.
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, the framework is very, very important, But then the other thing we need to look at from a historical point of view is that aid and those so-called harsh conditionality that were attached to it also, have something to do with the fact that there was lack of discipline among the recipient countries.
Okay.
So here we pick African countries and Latin American countries who misbehaved, for which the IMF and the World Bank in the 80s decided to attach strict conditionalities to the aid they gave us within a structured program known as the Structure Adjustment Program. You see, so, and where did it start from? In the 70s. In Ghana is always used as an example. What did the champion say? Okafo Didi. Yentua. You go and you borrow, and then you say you will not pay. Sometimes you even say your predecessors went to borrow, so you are not going to pay. That smacks of lack of knowledge of economic issues. Okay. So these were the things that were lacking in some African countries. The extent to which these harsh conditions were introduced. Right. So by 1979, African countries were owing IMF to the tune of $56 billion. Now you want them to let that money go for free? No. Yes. So they had to develop a new structure. Okay, so that new structure was what came with those conditions. But those conditions, you didn't see them among Germany, you didn't see them among South Korea. So if you want to bring the same thing, straight jacket here in Africa, well, let's work, given the conditionalities. So let me give you a last one. That 56 billion in 1979, which we were owing, African countries were owing the IMF and World Bank, even after they had introduced the Structure Adjustment Program with the intention of reducing the debt. Look, African countries were able to, were made to develop structures or systems and policies that made them extract whatever they wanted to extract, yet we were still owing. As of 1986, that money, which was 56 billion, had ballooned to 200 billion. So where are we going?
I see.
Yeah.
Well, all too soon we would have to draw down the curtain on this program. I was just enjoying myself. But Prof, your lights back.
I think that we have to become like the legendary spider. Africa, if there is something called Africa and all the countries within it, must become like the legendary spider. We have to be smart. We have to look within to bring forth what we need to survive, which is our web. Our web is within us, like the spider. It's the web that gives you sustenance, it gives you protection, it gives you a place to stay. It is that which you use to entangle and ensnare your enemy. It is with that which you use to get your food. It all comes from within you. So that's what we have to do. Anansi.
Thank you very much, Professor Deladem from the History Department of the University of Cape Coast for joining us, and Dr. Wendy Ansah, also from the Sociology Department of the University of Cape Coast. My name is Deladem Kiseih, and as we leave, I would leave you with this philosophy that until we begin to look from within, all our efforts to get people to come in and help us will yield no result. Thank you to the production team, Adelaide Asempa, Kakra, and Emmanuel, for doing all the production work. Next week, we will come your way with another edition. Bye-bye.
Down, oh, no. See.
see.